Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to talk about Labour's GB Energy announcement last week. Partly because what I'd really like to talk about are the manifestos, but they are stubbornly absent from the campaign right now. But partly because, and this came as a real surprise to me, the GB Energy announcement appears to have had a surprising amount of cut through, certainly according to Pollster More in Common. So this pollster's been surveying attitudes of voters towards the general election campaign. They've done quite a few focus groups, for example. And most of the results are not at all surprising. People think that Britain is broken. They want change. There's a high level of distrust for politicians of all parties. This is consistent with every other pollster asking about the same things. They've also found that most of the announcements made in the election campaign so far have largely passed them by. Again, not surprising. If you have a population of people who are very cynical about politics, and who can blame them, then they're not going to pay a lot of attention. It's depressing. I've said before that for a lot of voters, it's really the final week where they will really start to turn on to this election. This is when political parties will be blowing most of their campaign funds. But there were two policy announcements which did get some attention. The first is Sunak's national service policy. According to More in Common, a lot of voters like the sound of it, but are not in favour of conscription or just the forced nature of it in general. They would like to see the emphasis on the voluntary aspect of it. So basically, voters like the sound of the name, but not what the policy actually is. Again, not surprising. But what I was surprised about was that a lot of people in these focus groups were bringing up GB Energy unprompted. So it's not just that they knew about it when asked, which would have been surprising enough for me, but people being surveyed were actually raising the policies themselves without anyone mentioning it. I find that astounding. Encouraging, but astounding. It's looking like it's going to be a real selling point for Labour in this election. So it's worth going over a few features of the plan. So I'm going to kick off with the aspect of it, which actually, when they launched it last week, made me facepalm before we get on to the good stuff. So Labour kicked off the scheme last week during Starmer's visit to Scotland, which is where the headquarters for GB Energy are going to be. And it involved the unveiling of the logo. Now, you look at the logo. I looked at the logo. I thought, yeah, that makes sense. It's a decent enough logo. Until people pointed out, and when I say people, I mean mostly on the right wing, obviously, that it was basically just taken from clip art. They've just paid a few quid to be able to use it. So it's not even original. I said at the time, this is why Labour should stop using agencies for things they don't need to use agencies for. What they could have done, and indeed I'm going to say should have done, last year, they should have done this a year ago, they should have launched a national competition for kids to design it. They'd have come up with loads of great designs, and it would have generated a lot of public interest much earlier as well. And you'd have had an original logo out of it. Still, this unnecessary own goal aside, it is being taken seriously by the public, it seems, who, on the evidence so far, approve. So they've dodged that cock up. One criticism raised by right-wing commentators was that GB Energy will not actually produce its own energy, so how can it reduce our bills? Despite where the question comes from, it's worth explaining because it is a question that needs asking. And the answer is, so what GB Energy will do, what their purpose is, and this was stated a long time ago, is it's there to invest in low carbon energy production. The reason our energy bills massively increased in the wake of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine is because oil and gas prices massively increased. There were energy customers in the UK who complained that their bills were doubling. It says, well, my energy company says that all of their energy production comes from renewable energy. What gives? And it's because your energy company wasn't lying, probably. They probably do generate all their electricity from renewable sources, but you don't get your energy from your energy company. The energy that energy companies produce goes to the national grid, and then we all draw from that grid. And so it doesn't matter who your energy company is. We're all tapping into the same pool of energy that all of them are feeding into. And the price of energy is set such that the most expensive form of energy production can turn a profit. This meant that even though the invasion of Ukraine did not increase the cost of energy from solar, wind or nuclear or whatever, any other form of low carbon energy, the prices went up anyway to compensate the power stations using gas. Well, the power stations using gas won't be able to turn a profit if we do this. So it was really that simple. Fossil fuels are the most expensive way to produce energy. So all these right-wing shills go, oh, the net zero is going to make us all cold and poor. It's like, no, it's the opposite, mate. It's the opposite. So if we reduce the amount of energy we're consuming from fossil fuel sources, our bills will be lower. So the way GB Energy will eventually, not immediately, eventually reduce bills is by investing in small and large scale low carbon energy production so that we can elbow fossil fuels out of the equation. Labour published a document some time ago which highlights some of the projects that they've already got eyed up. I know some people, One Angry Pagan is definitely one of them, who will keep asking, what are some of these projects? They're in there. That's all I know. They're in there. Obviously, a lot of the projects that they invest in won't be known about yet because it's the purpose of this group to find those investment opportunities, which they will do as soon as it starts up. But there are some details already identified, including details of jobs and the funding it will generate in different parts of the country. The document is still up on Labour's website, so we assume it is still current. Labour's main pitch for the project is that because foreign governments own quite a few of the energy companies active in the UK, that taxpayers abroad are profiting more from our energy than we do. GB Energy will be publicly owned, and so as well as allowing the government to make sure that they prioritise low carbon energy in a rush to meet net zero, all the profits come back to us for further investment. Labour have said it will initially focus on wind and solar, which is obvious, but there is a particular focus on offshore wind, nuclear power and hydrogen on the GB Energy website as well. But ultimately the group's task will be, how can we boost our grid capacity and move towards net zero as quickly as possible? Because we need that in order to move towards electric vehicles, for example, whilst reducing our carbon footprint at the same time. Another criticism, the Tories have said the plan is unfunded, but the funding will come from windfall taxes on oil and gas companies. And they were going, oh, but we already have windfall taxes on oil and gas companies, so you need more money for this. It's like, yeah, we do have those windfall taxes in theory, but in practice, no, we don't. Because, there was a lot of gnashing of teeth for them even to levy the windfall taxes in the first place. However, they implemented so many tax breaks that actually some of these oil and gas company giants don't actually pay anything, and some of the rest don't pay very much at all. So Labour have said that, first of all, they're actually going to increase the windfall tax rate, but they're going to close off a load of those tax breaks. So in other words, the windfall tax will not only exist, but they will have to pay it. So it seems pretty well funded to me, at least in terms of explaining where the money will come from. So in a nutshell, the purpose of GB Energy is to promote investment in clean energy, to divert jobs from the oil and gas industry, which will also weaken their hold, to this green technology sector, make sure that the public get a share of the profits in order to reinvest, and boost the grid to be able to cope with the transition from fossil fuel consumption to the electrification of pretty much all our power needs. And it would seem that a good chunk of the public like the idea. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.